Hey everyone, welcome back to my channel. So I was thinking today about this topic, and the title of this video is I No Longer Trust My Body. And I think it's really important to talk about this because many people, from the feedback I've gotten and my own experience, is that they suddenly feel like they don't have agency or dominion over their body and mind, which they had always had previous to this drug experience. And that can be a really scary thing. And I can speak to this from my own withdrawal experience, plus my autoimmune experience, which I've had almost 30 years of experience with that. And that can take some time to process because when I first got my first autoimmune disease, to have this understanding that your body is attacking itself, which is what they say autoimmunity is, that's a really disturbing thing. And it takes a while to process that and be like, why is this happening to me? And then a lot of people will get a second and a third autoimmune disease. And it's disturbing to think that my body is attacking itself and shutting down its own organs. So I had prior experience to sort of that distrust or mistrust in my body. But then it was compounded tenfold when I went into withdrawal and I no longer had control over my physical body. So I had the diagnosed involuntary movement disorder, and also my thoughts. I mean, I really couldn't think in normal thought for about 4.5 years. I had violent, intrusive thoughts every second of the day for 4.5 years. And that is extremely disturbing. So basically, to feel like I had lost control already with the autoimmunity, plus now my muscles were jerking and moving on their own, and I wasn't controlling that. Plus, I couldn't control what was going on in my mind 24/7. It didn't matter what I did. I could not control it. And I want to acknowledge my last video because, again, I think it gets so misconstrued when I put content out about mindset, because people will say in the comments, this is chemical, I have no control over it, the Joe Dispenza, the mind body, none of that makes a difference. And I can confirm that it doesn't make a difference, in the sense of it didn't matter what I did. Nothing changed the way that my mind was spinning and looping constantly. I tried absolutely everything that I could find online for years, and it just wasn't making a difference. And I had to come to that point where I made the decision of, okay, I can't control what's going on in my body or my mind, but I can choose the way that I perceive it, and I can choose the actions that I take. And that's more what I'm talking about. I know of all people how whatever you try just does not work until the symptoms decide to subside. But in the interim, how are you going to have a quality of life? And that's where my approach comes in. And I actually don't take an extreme approach. I used to, where I was like, you can't touch this, you can't do this, you can't do that. And I learned over time in talking to so many people that it really does take a balanced approach, because different things work for different people. So I'm not sitting here on this platform saying, you can't do this, you can't do that. The purpose of my coaching was to get people's background histories. It puts a lot of sort of pieces of the puzzle together when I talk to people one-on-one, which I'm not doing now, but I was doing for quite some time. And you put all that together and it paints this picture of where that individual person is. And only they can choose which path they go down. And I supported people staying off meds. I supported people reinstating, trying other things, and certain situations required different levels of medical assistance, obviously. But I supported people in what they thought was the best path for them. And that's still my belief right now. And so I'm never trying to claim that if you just visualize your future, everything is just gonna go away. I'm not that toxic positivity. That's not me. But the way I perceive it is, even people who have terminal illnesses where death is a certain thing could be a relatively short amount of time, there comes a point in your suffering, no matter what your suffering is, where you make the decision of how you act and how you perceive what's going on. And that's more what I'm talking about. So if visualizing and having a positive mindset keeps you going, That's why I share that on this channel. I don't share it to be like, well, all you people just need to mind over matter and you'll get through this. Because I tried all of that and it didn't work. But I needed those type of things to maintain hope and give me somewhat of a quality of life. There were times early on when I was doing things like going out to stores when I didn't feel like I could, and my muscles were jerking. I mean, I remember, I don't know if it was my mom or who I was talking to, but I was like, I look like I'm tweaking. Like it looked like I was on drugs. Like I'm sure people thought I was a drug addict and it was disturbing to me, but I was starting to make those choices like I can't just sit here and do nothing. And maybe that's not the right approach for everyone, and I acknowledge that. But I think you have to make a choice at a certain point. And I've talked to many protracted people heading into that protracted direction, and my own experience. And usually people are like, you know what? I'm sick of this. I'm sick of spending time on the forums talking about how this person wants to end their life and this person wants to end their life and this person telling me I have permanent brain damage and this person. For me, I can't live in that space, and I couldn't. I did for a long time, and then I just made the decision to focus on the people who had recovered. So that was where the mindset really came in for me. And I had had positive experiences with visualization in the past, even if my reality and my current circumstance looked nothing like what I was visualizing. I still did it because it's like a form of escapism, and it can really conjure up an incredible amount of hope. And some of the mind body people that I follow, they'll talk about the importance of this visualization and seeing yourself healed and making plans for what you'll do when you're better. And they'll acknowledge in their videos, people will say, well, I don't know how to visualize, or I can't. And they'll challenge them and say, but you do, because right now you're conjuring up images of this never getting better. You're in a permanent state. You're always going to be disabled. You're always going to be on the edge, where you can't take this for one more second. But it's just choosing to flip that. And it takes a lot more mental effort to do any of that positive, hopeful stuff because of how bad your current reality is. But that's the purpose of my channel, is to offer different things. And so sometimes I'll talk about mindset and mind body because it helped me survive. And other times I've talked about, if you are thinking of reinstating, here's the things to consider. If you need to take or want to explore natural options, here's the things to consider. I choose to look at things like a pyramid approach. You try the least risk things at the bottom and you work your way up. And a lot of people will find they'll get some relief at a lower tier rather than jumping straight to the highest risk drug or supplement or treatment or whatever they're looking at trying. So I just wanted to acknowledge that. But as far as the I don't trust my body, that's a very disturbing thing. And it takes a long time to get to a place of almost peace through that process because it is a frightening thing. And again, when I talked in the last video about the fear, I talked about it in two different aspects of fear. The first one is the fear of the symptoms themselves. And this goes into, I don't trust my body. And that's terrifying. And the symptoms themselves are terrifying. But there's a second fear that can be added on to this that we have some level of control over. I'm not going to feed the fear by saying, oh my God, this is never going to get better. And this person that I read about had this and it never went away, or they're still disabled, or they're still, I think living in that is not good for anybody. And it's important to express and vent. And that's why there are those types of platforms and forums. But I've never had anybody say to me, I spend 6 hours a day on the forums and I just feel so much better. It just doesn't happen. And so that's why I was talking about that in my last video. And my purpose on this channel is always to spread hope. It's never to gaslight or victim blame. I mean, I've been through a lot. I have 2 chronic permanent diseases, and I went through withdrawal. I've been through withdrawal for 4.5 years. And so I'm not going to sit here as someone who, I just went through a mild withdrawal for 3 months. And so I'm sitting here wagging my finger, you're doing this and this wrong. I have to offer all these alternatives because I've seen people recover with all of these different things. And I think it's important for people to know that. And you don't have to take what I say as right for you or as truth, but so just disregard it. And And that's why I feel like a broken record when I'm saying over and over and over and over. I'm not saying that this is a magic bullet and this is the cause and this will take it away. All of this is just theories. All of this is different things I've seen work for different people. And so I'm just offering that in my message. So, learning to trust the process and trust your body again is very difficult. And this is where the meditation, the somatic stuff can be very helpful. I have had, I don't know how many crying episodes where I had my hand on my heart and I was trying to do my affirmations, my visualizations, and bring myself back into trusting my body. I mean, there was explosive anger. There was so much tear shedding, and there was so much begging and pleading with God, cursing God, telling him how much I hate him. But I was trying so hard to trust because I was like that's what I know what it's like to trust your body. And it was almost like trying to encourage my body or talk to it and be like, come back online. You know how to work. You used to work. And people who have recovered from severe situations are telling me it can work again. So I have to come back into my body because you get so disconnected from it because it's turned against you. You have all of these horrible, really difficult to process emotions. And it's a scary feeling, and it's also a very angering feeling because this was done to you, and that makes it even harder. And that's why I've talked to about the layers of this process, because it is a layered process. um and I think one thing that really helped me in my autoimmune journey, which is another reason that I talk the way that I do lately on this channel, is I got diabetes at 16. I had the highest blood sugar on record. It was 64 millimoles per liter, or 1,150 milligrams per deciliter. Normal is about 83. And if you're in millimoles, it's about 5. And I was at 10 times that. And so they hadn't really seen anybody with my blood sugar levels that was still conscious. I was almost in a coma, but not quite. I mean, I was dying. And it's a good thing I went to the ER when I did, because they saved my life. But I remember my GP, because I was in the hospital for 2.5 weeks. He came and sat at the end of my hospital bed and he said, Melissa, this isn't a death sentence. It's not a life sentence. It doesn't mean like you're not terminally ill. And I remember being like, why is he saying this to me? And I feel like he had that foreknowledge in all of his years of experience of, I don't want to send the message to her that her life is now ruined. And I really appreciate that now in hindsight, because in the diabetes online community, there's a lot of horror stories, and I'm aware of the risks, because I have a diabetic cousin who's totally blind. She has glass eyes. So I'm aware of the risks, but I also am glad he instilled that in me early on, that I could still live a good life, because that always stuck with me. And I think that impresses on your mind when you're in such a vulnerable position. And I think the same thing is going on here. I just don't think it's healthy to live in, for months and years on end, the idea that this is never going to go away and there's only one way out. At least for me, I mean, I did live in that space, but eventually I had to be like, okay, I have to try something different. And that's why I talk about that here. And like I said, some of that somatic, some of that almost like spiritual work can be helpful, because even if you can't change the symptoms, I want to try to change the way that I'm processing the trauma and the horror of this. And that goes to anything that's really long-term, chronic, permanent, is how do you learn to live with it, essentially? And at least in this situation, you have a very good chance that it's going to go away. There are things you can get that never go away. And so learning spiritually how to cope with that, process that, live with that day in and day out for the rest of your earthly life, and how to come to terms with that. It's a practice, and it's something I guess I was fortunate to learn early on in my life, even though withdrawal is not like diabetes, but the longevity of it is, and the isolation of it can feel the same. And so I just think it's helpful for anyone going through this journey to kind of come back to themselves and be like, I trust you. And that can bring you a lot of peace, you know. I trust you, body. Like you know how to get back there. You know how to get back to homeostasis. I've got to just kind of get out of the way and try to take steps towards recovery. And you're not doing anything wrong if you're not feeling relief of symptoms, even though you're trying all of these different things. It's not your fault. It's just, I want you to be able to have some type of quality of life while you're going through the recovery process. And so I'm always trying to be encouraging to people in that way. Yeah, because a lot of times I was just going through the days and taking my symptoms along with me. I did stay in my house for a long time when I was reinstating. I wasn't very functional, and that was where my support people were with me online 24/7. But eventually I was just like, I have to start doing something. No matter how bad my mental stuff is, no matter how much my muscles are jerking, I have to start doing something, even a hair's width, towards getting my life back despite symptoms and kind of bringing them along with me. So, and again, everything I talk about is after you're out of acute, and you're starting to get a little bit of space from your symptoms, or maybe you're not getting a lot of space from your symptoms, but you're just like, I can't just live like this. I've got to start to do something else. So that's the purpose of this channel. I'm rambling right now. I hope that makes sense. And yeah, it's the most trying experience of your life, but it can really grow you spiritually and in every way possible. And the people I've talked to who've recovered all say that it's such a spiritual experience, because it really is. It puts you kind of in the face of your own mortality and takes you to the edge of your sanity. But anyway, I hope that offers some hope and some clarification on what I mean when I say the things that I do, especially in the last video. So take care, everyone, and I'll talk to you next time. Bye.